Welcome to the 9th Annual Annapolis Film Festival. I'm Mimi Edmonds, and I'm really glad to be here tonight or today with James Burns, an incredible director and producer of some stunning films, one of which we're going to see right now called The Water Walker. James is a director and producer at Vice. He's also been and is a Sundance Institute Fellow and has had several of his works accepted at Netflix, The Atlantic, NPR, and a number of festivals. But tonight, the film we're going to see is The Water Walker and has a lot of meaning and symbolism, which he's going to describe to us. So, James, this is quite a different film for you. Can you tell me what attracted you to The Water Walker?
Yeah, thank you for the intro and for having me here. Thank you to everybody who's watching the film. One clarification, I haven't had several works accepted at Netflix, but I've had some works presented on Netflix. What drew me to this story really was Stevie Salas, who is a producer that I've worked with in the past. He owns an all-Indigenous production company in Canada called Seeing Red, and they focus on Indigenous forward stories and uplifting voices from their community. Stevie was working with a nonprofit organization called Sawyer Water that goes into communities of need that don't really have clean water, and they install clean water installations. And while Stevie's been working on that project with Sawyer, he heard about Autumn Peltier, who's been a water activist since she was 8 years old. And, he was really the one that said, we got to do something on this girl. And me and Stevie had worked together in the past. So he really wanted me to do this story with him as well.
Can I ask you, what drew you to the story of water? Was it her, or was that this is an issue? We are seeing another film at the festival, which is called End the Line, The Women of Standing Rock, which is also critically about water and the fight for water and the fight for the rights of water. Yeah. So your film, as a prelude to that, ties in beautifully, even though it stands alone, but it's a beautiful continuum of the value of water to the Indigenous world and Indigenous communities in the United States.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there's no water, there's no life. Simple as that. And for that reason, water is very sacred and personal to us and the world, really. And I think that, while I don't want to speak too much on Indigenous communities and what they hold sacred, because that's not really my lane, I can say that I was attracted to telling the story with Autumn because of her powerful message as a youth, being able to stand up to adults who are largely responsible for the destruction of our planet and deliver a powerful message. And I think it's something really interesting about a 14-year-old who's willing to get up there and tell the adults who are worried about their 401ks and all this other stuff, that it's their future too. And it really puts things into perspective. So that's what attracted me to the story. But again, water is obviously everything, all encompassing of sustaining life. And it's so important that we make sure to take care of the planet and our water sources.
She is amazing. She seems far more sophisticated and mature than a 14-year-old, and her way of speaking and fighting for the rights of this water is phenomenal. And I think somewhere you say that they were called water reporters, but it has another meaning when you call her the Water Walker.
Yeah, there's a history there with Autumn's grandmother,
Yeah.
And she was a water activist, so it's in her blood. And they would basically take copper pails and they would do these very long walks in protest around large lakes, and they would walk around these giant bodies of water in protest, and that's why they call them water walkers. And so there's a long lineage of that in Autumn's family.
How did you um, design it? How did you decide, well, how am I going to tell this story? How am I going to get this? I mean, it's a beautiful 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And you condense a large, large issue into 15 minutes. Tell us how you did that and what stuck out for you.
Yeah, I think first there's probably two parts to that. The first is that um, docs that raise awareness with lots of experts and um, you know professors and lawmakers and stuff are great and they're important. Um, but I still wanted to make something that was more about her journey and less about like giving you tons of information about you know I just wanted people to channel her energy. And I feel like at the end of the day, you begin to have the same thoughts and discussions, but this time you're more connected to it through a human experience. The second part of the way to we wanted to tell the story is that I've always been a big fan of The Little Prince, the children's book. And during this time you know when we were making this film, a lot of youth activists were popping up, and it just reminded me a lot of The Little Prince. So that's where the animation really like comes in to kind of like they're almost like chapters. Graham Greene, who is a legend, obviously incredible actor and advocate in the indigenous community, narrated. Um, and yeah, so I wanted people to feel sort of the immersed experience, and that's why I shot it very cinematic. But also I wanted the animation to like really kind of ground.
Yeah, there's a lyrical quality that doesn't let you get away and that is almost spellbinding. You just are taken in by the mix of color and light and music and then the words. I mean, it's really almost a song, and I was just, as I say, spellbound. And I think sometimes, poetry is stronger than expository language. And in a way, as a really outstanding, stunning poem, its message is almost stronger.
I love the way you put that, poetics and expository. Like, um, I try not to do too much exhibition in my films,
Yeah.
and really like keep it to the elements of the heart. Um, and by the way, the animation was done by Christy Belcourt, who is also very close with Autumn and her mother, and some of those paintings even have Autumn's grandmother in them. So there's such a close connection with to everything that's going on in the film with all the collaborators. um, and yeah, I think in the end, what people are uh, taking away from that are just all of those beautiful things combined. And I don't know, I think they're just, I'm honored to be able to be a part of the film and work with.
I get a sense of you in that film that you are honored. It's not heavy-handed. It is very light and it is very carried in Autumn and her world.
Mm.
So as a producer, not Indigenous, I think for me, you are invisible, but you have a good hand with it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's important that, to me especially, like coming on to these kind of stories, that I'm learning and also lending whatever I have to offer, um, and not being the expert or the because these stories are important. And if it was important to collaborate with all of those voices. So
So what, just in making the film, what for you was the biggest challenge?
I think it was just logistical stuff that's always a challenge when you're on a smaller budget. Um, and it's just, figuring out a way to uh, also coordinate Autumn's schedule, who's very busy, at the time, 14-year-old who is speaking all over the place. She has school, you know, it's, it's a lot for her to do this. So you have to be very mindful of the time that you're taking up of her, and, how
Right.
she's feeling. And it was very important for us that we made sure that both Autumn and her mother, Stephanie, um, that there wasn't too much strain on them by the film crew.
Where are we geographically?
So we start in Ottawa and we travel to New York City.
That's also very seamless.
Yeah.
What, where did the film reach its, for you? When was it at its height that you just felt, I've got it? What in that film soars to the top for you, in your heart, in your mind?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I really feel like it was in Ottawa, like it was amazing seeing Autumn speak at the UN, and being there was cool, and you can feel her power. But really it was like being where she lives and being surrounded by her family and understanding her a little bit more was where I felt like really good. I mean, and then once we get to New York City, it's just a grind to get like 4 blocks down the street with a production van, you know. And she's also has to speak at the UN. And it's very intense and crazy. But I like those quiet moments that we had in Ottawa, and being in her environment. I thought that was really great.
Yeah. How did she feel about it, the film?
You have to ask her, but since we spoke, I think both her and her mom and everyone who was a part of it is really happy. And um, again,
I'm
that's
not surprised. I'm not surprised. Where would you like it to go, and where would they like it to go? And I assume it's the same place, but tell us what should happen to this film.
you know whatever platform it lives on, whatever home it finds, I hope that it reaches the largest audience as
Yeah.
possible. And I think we all feel that way. It's about getting Autumn's message out there, and also inspiring youth to do the same thing.
Mhm.
The adults, we don't have anything figured out these days. The kids, uh,
They
they're
have
the
it figured
future.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the future leaders. And
Yeah.
so Autumn is a great example of what you can do with your voice. And if they can watch that and be inspired, then I think we're one step toward a better world.
Did you how did you write it? Did you direct it? What was mostly your role in this? I know you were essential and it's really your film, but
Yeah.
just a little bit for filmmakers out there. How
Mhm.
did you
Yeah, I wrote and directed it.
yeah.
Again, it was figuring out her journey was very simple, and the 3-part act was in there, kind of like baked in already. Like, I'm going to travel to the UN and deliver the speech, and there's going to be some sort of catharsis there. So that was sort of the spine of it, but then it was trying to figure out tonally and visually of what it meant. So adding those layers on is where the Little Prince came in with the
Yeah.
animation, and the voiceover with Graham Greene, and a lot of those words from Graham Greene in the voiceover are also poems from Christy Belcourt, who did the animation. And so it was taking those poems. I was able to take some poems that she wrote and kind of, with her permission, rearrange them for the film.
How many hours did you have altogether to work with?
Hours of footage.
Yeah, what are you bringing it down to? You brought it down to 15 minutes. What did you have to work with? Hundreds of hours or 3
Oh
hours?
no, no, and that's, I guess that's the other thing, is I think traditionally a lot of documentary filmmakers just shoot, 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 shoot.
Yeah.
But I like to storyboard, and like to be really precise about like what it is that I'm going to go get. And if for some reason we can't get that, then there's some creative improvising and figuring out what the scene means, and how we can, fit it into to the narrative that we have. So I really try to like um, storyboard and script out what the story is, and I do the same thing at work. I advice, like, you write your one sheets or your pitches, and what editors end up getting is pretty darn close to what I pitched. So I try to use those as a paper edit.
Well, I think with this one, you hit a total home run, at least by my viewing of films. It's really one of the most beautiful lyrical statements of a people, of a struggle, and of an individual human being, and a lovely young woman.
Oh.
So I want to congratulate you and thank you for bringing it to us, and let everybody know that it's going to play throughout the festival on its own, as well as in front of End of the Line. I also want to say that James has another film that he's brought to the Annapolis Film Festival, The Box, which we'll hear about later. So you're a double giver.
Thank you, Mimi. I hope I can only ask that the audience is half of inspired as you are by watching the film. So
I have an advantage because I've seen the enormous growth in you. So I'm not even going to say anything about that. It's just, I feel honored to be talking to you.
same.
And I want to thank you again. And I think people are going to be seriously moved by this piece of poetry. So
Thank you for having me on.
thank you so much.
All right.
Okay.